Hello, everyone. Hello, students. Mr. Grammar here. I hope everyone's having a great day. Today, we will talk about author's purpose. So, what is an author's purpose? An author's purpose is a reason for writing a text, and here we can figure out what the author wants us to take away from the text as readers. So, to inform. If an author wants to inform us, he or she teaches certain information. So, for example, the dangers of global warming. In The Dangers of Global Warming, the author informs us of how global warming will have consequences. So, for example, the oceans will rise, temperatures will increase, and thus hurt life here on Earth as we know it. Okay, another author's purpose is to persuade. Convince the reader to agree with an author's opinion. So, for example, public schools are better than private schools. So here, in this article, the author may lay out why public schools are better. So, for example, you don't have to wear uniforms unlike you do in private schools. Perhaps public schools have funding that will help buy resources for students to increase learning in general. Okay, so depending on the stance that the author takes, that's how he or she wants to persuade us, okay? And let's see, to entertain. Okay, to provide enjoyment. So, for example, the Harry Potter series, the Goosebumps series, these books are designed to provide enjoyment for us, okay? So, here we're not being informed of information, we're not being persuaded to believe or think a certain way. Here, this is pure enjoyment, okay? To describe. Provide a detailed explanation. So, for example, what is life like in Italy? Here, beautiful scenery, the cuisine is amazing, people are friendly, a lot of people spend their time outside. So, perhaps we might have to get a vacation before the summer's over. What do y'all think? All right, and to express. So, if an author wants to express, here he or she wants to share an opinion or beliefs with a reader. So, for example, walking is a lifestyle. Okay, so here the author expresses how walking is a lifestyle. It isn't just an exercise that you do for 30 minutes. Walking is a lifestyle is perhaps the author here walks to work every day. Perhaps the author here walks his or her dog every day. Okay, perhaps parking your car away from the store so you can get extra steps in is a way of life. Walking is a lifestyle. Okay, and to analyze. The author wants to analyze. To critically examine a certain set of information. Okay, so here, the value of an education. So, in a text like this, perhaps the author dives in of how education will help us become self-reliant. It will teach us about agriculture, how to grow our own plants. It will teach us how to read, how to do arithmetic, how to write, how to express your message across. The value of education. Perhaps an education will help us become better tradesmen, or how the value of an education will propel us into college successfully. Okay, students, so these are author's purposes. Now let's look at a couple of exercises, okay? Read the descriptions of each item and determine the author's main purpose. Here we will look at to entertain, to persuade, or to inform. So keywords, students, entertain, persuade, or inform. Ask yourself, why is the author writing this? To persuade, entertain, and inform. So always keep that in mind whenever you're trying to figure out what the author's purpose. So, for example, a story about a family trying to stick together and survive through the Great Depression in the Midwest in the 1930s. Okay, so the author's purpose is to entertain. It is to entertain because it is a fictional story about a family during the Great Depression. Okay, so why is it entertain and not to inform? Well, here it's a story about a family trying to stick together, okay? So it could be a fictional story within a historic time frame. So the Great Depression was a time in American history. But we're not focused on just the historical aspect of the Great Depression. Here we're focusing on a story about a certain family trying to stick together, trying to survive. So for that reason, it is to entertain. So the key word here is story. If it were to say it's about the Great Depression in the Midwest in the 1930s, then you'd imagine, okay, it's part of a history book. Here it is to inform. But remember, the key word is story. So it is to entertain. Number 2. A section in a history book describing the conditions and causes of the Great Depression in the Midwest in the 1930s. Okay, the author's purpose here is to inform. Here, it is to inform because it is a section of a history book. History books are factual, so it is informative. We're not talking about a story about a family trying to stick together in number 2. Here, we're actually looking at the facts. So therefore, it is to inform. Number 3, an instructional booklet describing how to operate a smartphone. Okay, so keyword here is instructional, describing how to operate a smartphone. It is teaching a person how to operate a phone, so it is informative. Okay, number 4, an article where the author argues that an iPhone is better than an Android phone. Alright, so here the author's purpose is to persuade. Why is it to persuade and not to inform? It is to persuade because here the author argues that the iPhone is better than the Android. So here we have two things. iPhone is better than the Android, so here the author is persuading us, to convince us. And finally, a poem about why the iPhone is the greatest consumer electronic device ever made. Okay, so this author's purpose is to entertain. Poems are read for entertainment and educational purposes, so it is to entertain. Okay, so you might ask yourself, why is number 5 not persuade? It is not persuade because it says poem. It's not an argument. It's not a persuasive essay. It's a poem. Okay? And it's not comparing something to something else like number 4 does with iPhone is better than Android. Number 5, we're talking about a poem. And here the author is telling us how it's the greatest consumer electronic device ever made. So it's not just the best iPhone. It's the best electronic item ever created. So it's better than laptops, video games, TVs. Here, that's why it is to entertain. Perhaps it could be a humorous poem to entertain the reader.